L, oh, just one L, I'm sorry. Miliary. You're welcome. Okay, before we move on, look at page 274. And I'll put Orianne on the spot now with some of these difficult pronunciation words. Look under post-primary tuberculosis and where the bullets are at. Most new TB cases are associated with the following risk factors.
Malnourished individuals, people in institutional housing, nursing homes, prisons, homeless shelters, people living in overcrowded conditions, immunosuppressed patients, organ transplant patients, cancer patients, human immunodeficiency virus, HIV-infected patients. TB is a leading cause of death in HIV patients, and alcohol abuse.
Okay, so when you're taking care of patients in the hospital, people who come in from these areas, be cautious, be aware that there is a possibility that they do have tuberculosis. Now, why is that important to you? So you can protect yourself, okay? Because they're not going to put it in the chart until, I'm being a little facetious here, but they're not going to put it in the chart until 3 days later, because they didn't figure out that the patient had tuberculosis and didn't get the testing done. And so when they initially come in, it might not be identified that this patient has tuberculosis. So when you're doing your history, note things like this and say, well, I'm just going to protect myself and go ahead and wear a mask in this patient's room. And, if the patient is curious, why do you have on a mask and no one else does? You can just say, I'm not feeling, up to par, and I just want to make sure that I don't, cough any germs on anybody or something. Just play it off like it's you and not them. And then in this day and age of flu, they're going to see the mask. The hospital's going to send you home. What are you doing here spreading flu germs? Okay, so I've already kind of mentioned this. Just read the slide. Okay, questions about those classifications? So this is what happens when a patient has tuberculosis that is infectious, that is not sealed off, that is causing problems. Alveolar consolidation, debris of cellular debris, macrophages, old white blood cells. Different things are going to get trapped in the alveoli and consolidate. Alveolar capillary destruction. The other disease we think about is emphysema with that happening, but it also happens with tuberculosis. Caseous tubercles or granulomas, and this is when they're cased off or sealed. Fibrosis and secondary calcification of the lung parenchyma. What's the lung parenchyma? The alveoli. And also, if it gets in an area that actually causes the distal bronchioles to distort and dilate, now the patient has bronchiectasis along with the tuberculosis. Now, from these descriptions up here, is tuberculosis a restrictive or an obstructive disease? It could be a mixture. If it doesn't have,
But primarily restricted.
Primarily restrictive. if the bronchiectasis forms, then it becomes mixed. Does that make sense to everybody? And airway secretions can increase, and that would also add to the obstructive component. And here's the little pronunciation, and I still can't say it right. Tubercle. Oh, that's even worse. So lung tissue that surrounds the area of infection slowly produces this protective wall that I was talking about and actually encapsulates the bacteria. And I've already said this, so I'll just let you read the rest of the slide. Uh-huh.
I had a patient a couple weeks back that the nurse said that the x-ray showed that they had tuberculosis, but the acid fast stain showed up negative. How can that be?
Yeah, what we were just talking about, if the con is there, if the caseous tubercle is there and you see it on the x-ray,
Okay.
but the bacilli are trapped in there, then they're not going to be showing signs and symptoms because the body has blocked, contained it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was a dumb question.
No, it weren't.
Miss Meyer, people are carriers of TB. Is that how it presents to?
And that's what happens. You know, you've been exposed to tuberculosis, your body took care of it, except for these extra bacilli that couldn't be eradicated, so the body formed a wall, a capsule around them. Now you're walking around with this little, TB ball. You don't know it maybe, but you're walking around with it, and then all of a sudden you have a really bad cold. Your immune system is really down for some reason. It may be that you're elderly now, and so now this tubercle breaks open, and these bacilli, they can live for a long time. So now they come out, and you start coughing on somebody, and now you're infected. People around you are infected.
Did exercise break open tubercle?
Mm-hmm. Strenuous, lifting, muscle use, and different things like that. But it takes quite a bit to break it open. It's pretty secure in otherwise healthy individuals. Okay, and this is autopsy, and it's showing all these little areas of tubercles. I wouldn't be able to identify it. If I was looking at a lung, I would have to have somebody tell me this is what this is. Yeah, and I think pathology is pretty neat. That would be something interesting to go into at a later date. But there's that. Okay, and then up here, can you identify the area? And I'm going to go ahead and call it a con complex. Now, this is probably just a dilated vessel. It could be something, but this is the area that has the tuberculosis tubercle. And this is where the lymph is at in the lung. So that's why I called it a con, because it had already started to invade that area. Okay, so according to, I'm just going to read this. This is FYI, just to let you know the prevalence of tuberculosis. According to the CDC, there were 9,945 new cases of TB reported in the United States in 2012. In the scheme of things, 1,000 cases doesn't seem, 10,000 cases doesn't seem like that much in the scheme of things. The lowest since the reporting of TB began, which was back in 1953. There were 569 deaths from tuberculosis in 2010, the most recent year for which these data are available. And I meant to take the time to look it up because there should be something that came out about 2015 to update that statistic. A 27% decrease in TB deaths over a decade. And this is one of the things that we worry about when a disease is almost eradicated, is people getting too comfortable and not being as diligent about identifying, and then all of a sudden it makes a tremendous comeback. And what's happened with tuberculosis is, even though these numbers are down, as people develop HIV and different immunosuppressed diseases, the TB that's a perfect place for it to thrive and survive.
9,272 cases.
9,272.
Yes.
What about deaths? So that's even less. That's good. That's good news.
Doesn't give me a number, it just gives me, I don't even know, I can't find it.
Okay, well, we'll take a look at it. I'll try to remember to look it up, but hopefully the percentage is declining. So the majority of new TB cases in the U.S. occur in foreign-bodied individuals immigrating from countries where there's a high